Today let us talk about yoga, a word that is very commonly used, but whose deeper implications are rarely understood. The word yoga comes from the same root as the English word to yoke, to join. And yoga implies the philosophy and methodology of joining the divinity within us, the Atman, with the all-pervasive divinity, the Brahman. Now, this joining of these two is supposed to be the greatest goal of human life and the highest achievement. There are several forms of yoga, but I will talk only of the four major paths of yoga. The first is the Jnana Yoga, the way of the mind, the way of discrimination between the real and the unreal. We believe that there is an underlying unity throughout the cosmos, unchanging. And on that, as it were, like on a screen, our lives are played out. So Jnana Yoga involves trying to see what there is that is permanent behind this constantly changing universe. Because everything changes. In fact, the definition of life is samyak samsarati iti samsara, that which constantly changes. But because of that, we have to find something that is below and behind that is unchanging and changeless, and that is the divine. So Jnana Yoga involves a very clear intellectual discrimination between the real and the unreal, thereby leading us to see what it is that is real behind us. That is very much the path that in the West Plato took. Plato said we are all in a cave and all we can see are shadows thrown on the wall. We cannot see the objects, we cannot even see the light behind them. So those shadows on the wall, we have to realize are not the reality. The reality is something behind that. So that is the Jnana Yoga, the way of the mind. The second major path of yoga is the way of the heart, the way of the emotions. Without the emotions, without the heart chakra opening, you cannot reach the divine. The divine is not some kind of an intellectual illusion or syllogism that you've got to work out. The divine is something very real. And Jnana Yoga involves falling in love with the divine. I'll give you an example. For example, Jnana Yoga, the example would be Shankaracharya, who is a great philosopher. The Bhakti Yoga is different. That is where we fall in love with the divine. That is where people like the Nayanmars in South India, the Shaiva saints, or the Alvars, the Vaishnava saints, or the Bhakti movement people, the people like Meera and Surdas and Tulsidas and other people who loved the Lord. Now that all loved the divine in whatever way. One of the great advantages of our philosophy is that we can imagine the divine in whichever way we like. It can be male, it can be female, it can be Krishna, it can be Shiva, it can be Ganesha, it can be Hanuman, it can be Jesus Christ, it can be the prophets, whoever, whatever it is, but unless our heart opens in bhakti and devotion and surrender to the divine, we will not reach our goal. So if Jnana Yoga is the way of the mind, Bhakti Yoga is the way of the heart. And that explains all the religious festivals that we have, all the great utsavas that we have dedicated to different deities and different formulations of the divine. The divine is one, it can appear in many different forms. Now, the third path is Karma Yoga. You see, the Jnana Yoga is the way of the mind. People like Adi Shankaracharya or Plato, who were the great philosophers. Bhakti Yoga is the way of the heart of St. Francis of Assisi, of St. Teresa of Avila, of the Sufis, of Jalaluddin Rumi and so on, who fell in love with the divine. But there's a Karma Yoga also. Some people feel that yoga is only for those who can give up everything and go and sit in a cave or in a sort of classroom and just consider what the truth is. But we have to do something. We all have to act. If we don't act, we cannot continue our life. Civilization cannot continue. So how do we link our actions with yoga? There, the theory of Karma Yoga, it's in the Upanishads also, but particularly in the Gita, which says all karma is not karma yoga. Everybody is doing karma, for God's sake. I mean, nobody is sitting without doing karma. But karma yoga is work dedicated to the divine. Whatever you do, dedicate it to the divine, to your form of the divine. For example, I am a bhakta of Shiva. Yat yat karma karomi tat tat akhilam shambho tavaradhanam. Whatever I do, I dedicate to Lord Shiva, including this talk, for example. So that is a karma yoga. And dedicated works can also be a powerful methodology of spiritual growth. I think this is very important to understand. Spiritual growth is not something that can be done only in ashramas and in Himalayan caves. Spiritual growth is something that all of us can do in our daily life, provided always that we remember the divinity and dedicate whatever we do. And that has an additional advantage. If we dedicate our work to the divine, then we will not do a wrong thing. Because if we do something wrong, we'll realize immediately that this is not a work that can be worth dedicating to the divine or to our divine. And therefore, karma yoga is a very important part of yoga. So I've spoken of the jnana yoga, the way of the mind, of bhakti yoga, the way of the heart, karma yoga, the way of the hands, of the arms, and then there's a fourth yoga, which is known as the Raja Yoga, the royal yoga. That is the way of the breath. Now we believe that within the human body there are possibilities, there are mechanisms that if properly managed can bring about a transmutation or a transformation of consciousness. That is known as Raja Yoga. And that involves the breath. The mind, the heart, the hands and the breath. Now the breath, pranayama is the way of the breath, understanding the breath, watching the breath. Because breathing is something we do from the moment we are born, even before we are born, when we are in the womb, until literally our last breath. So breathing is something which is with us all the time. But we never teach people how to breathe properly. And breathing itself can be transformed into an art, into a mechanism. Now, the yoga that we see around us, all these physical exercises, are Hatha Yoga. They are part of this Raja Yoga. And that yoga is very popular now. There's a World Day of Yoga also, and all over the world the yoga is being practiced. They are very important. I'm not denigrating them. But they are part, because we believe that if you do your asanas properly, your postures properly, that will help your breath to move in the right direction, thereby helping you to achieve the divine. The human body itself has immense possibilities. This brings in what you may have heard of, the Kundalini. The Kundalini is the great force that we believe is at the base of the spine, and it is coiled 3.5 times around that main chakra, and under certain circumstances the Kundalini can be aroused, and as it rises it moves up the spine and it illuminates and energizes chakras within us until finally we reach the final chakra in the crown of the head. So all the whole Kundalini theory, the whole project of breathing, the whole project of doing these asanas and exercises, these are all part of the Raja Yoga. So what I've tried to put before you is the fact that yoga is an integrated philosophy. It is a philosophy that deals with all the various dimensions of the human personality. It deals with our minds, as the Jnana Yoga. It deals with our emotions, which is the Bhakti Yoga. It deals with our actions, which is the Karma Yoga. And it deals with our breathing, which is the Raja Yoga. So if these 4 yogas are integrated into our lives, then we certainly can move onwards on the path of spiritual growth and ultimately leading to spiritual realization. That, I think, is the real importance of yoga. It's very important to remember when we use the word yoga, how deep, how profound and how integrated a concept this is.